Good evening and welcome to Read with Chide. Today is day 87 today, and I don't know why it's not clear. It's kind of blurry. But hey, important thing is that we read the Bible. Today is day 87, and we are going to be reading Judges chapters 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to get right into it so that we can go super fast. Um, Yes. If you're just joining, please do well to share this link with your friends and loved ones, anyone who you think would benefit from joining us to read the Bible. Also, do well to ensure you are subscribed and that you have the bell icon clicked so that you are aware every single time we are live. Yeah, and you want to drop comments, thoughts, questions, mind blowing moments, whatever it is, in the comments as we read the Bible together. Judges chapter 4, verse 1. After Ehud's death, the Israelites again did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord turned them over to King Jabin of Hazor, the Canaanite king. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Sisera, who had 900 iron chariots, ruthlessly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, was a prophet who was judging Israel at that time. She would sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites would go to her for judgment. One day she sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, who lived in Kadesh in the land of Naphtali. She said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor, and I will call out Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, along with his chariots and warriors to the Kishon River. There I will give you victory over him." Barak told her, "I will go, but only if you will go with me." "Very well," she replied, "I will go with you, but you will receive no honor in this venture, for the Lord's victory over Sisera will be at the hands of a woman." So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. At Kadesh, Barak called together the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 warriors went up with him. Deborah also went with him. Now, the first time I heard the story, or that I read, the first time I read, well, because when we heard the story in Sunday school, they didn't really give these details like, oh, you know, Deborah said this. But when I first read this part of the Bible and I saw that Deborah said, "Oh, but the honor will not be to you. God will deliver Sisera into a woman's hand," and all of that, my head was like, "Oh, she now, Deborah, like she's the one going with him to battle. He said he will not go unless she goes with him. So, okay, God will deliver Sisera into her hand. God will deliver Sisera into a woman's hand." But apart, it was not Deborah. Let's keep reading. Very well, okay, yes, verse 11. Now, Heber the Kenite, a descendant of Moses' brother in law, Hobab, had moved away from the other members of his tribe and pitched his tent by the oak of Zananim near Kadesh. Then, when Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, he called for all 900 of his chariots and all of his warriors, and they marched from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Get ready. This is the day the Lord will give you victory over Sisera, for the Lord is marching ahead of you." So Barak led his 10,000 warriors down the slopes of Mount Tabor into battle. When Barak attacked, the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and warriors into a panic. Sisera leaped down from his chariot and escaped on foot. Then Barak chased the chariots and the enemy army all the way to Harosheth Hagoyim, killing all of Sisera's warriors. Not a single one was left alive. Meanwhile, Sisera ran to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because Heber's family was on friendly terms with King Jabin of Hazor. Jael went out to meet Sisera. Ja- Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come into my tent." He told her, "If anybody comes and asks you if there is anyone here, say no." But when Sisera fell asleep from exhaustion, when Sisera fell asleep from exhaustion, Jael quietly crept up to him with a hammer and tent peg in her hand. A hammer and tent peg in her hand. Then she drove the tent peg through his temple and into the ground, and so he died. When Barak came looking for Sisera, Jael went out to meet him. She said, "Come, and I will show you the man you are looking for." So he followed her into the tent and found Sisera lying there dead with the tent peg through his temple. So on that day, Israel saw God defeat Jabin, the, the Canaanite king. And from that time on, Israel became stronger and stronger against King Jabin until they finally destroyed him. On that day, chapter 5, verse 1. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. Israel's leaders took charge, and the people gladly followed. Praise the Lord. Excuse me. Verse 2. Israel's leaders took charge, and the people gladly followed. Praise the Lord. Listen, you kings. Pay attention, you mighty rulers. For I will sing to the Lord. For I will sing to the Lord. I will make music to the Lord, the God of Israel. Lord, when you set out from Seir and marched across the fields of Edom, the earth trembled, and the cloudy skies poured down rain. The mountains quaked in the presence of the Lord, and the God of Mount Sinai, in the presence of the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, and in the days of Jael, people avoided the main roads, and travelers stayed on winding paths. And travelers stayed on winding pathways. There were few people left in the villages of Israel until Deborah arose as a mother of Israel. I love that. As a mother of Israel, when Israel chose new gods, war erupted at the city gates. Yet not a shield or spear could be seen among the 40,000 warriors in Israel. My heart is with the commanders of Israel, with those who volunteered for war. Praise the Lord. Consider this, you who ride on the donkeys, you who sit on fancy saddle blankets, and you who walk along the road. Listen to the village musicians gathered at the watering holes. They recount the righteous victories of the Lord and the victories of his villagers in Israel. Then the people of the Lord marched down to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah, wake up, wake up, wake up, and sing a song. Arise, Barak. Lead your captives away, son of Abinoam. Down from Tabor marched the few against the nobles. The people of the Lord marched down against the mighty warriors. They came down from Ephraim, a land that once belonged to the Amalekites. They followed you, Benjamin, with your troops. From Machir, the commanders marched down. From Zebulun came those who carry a commander's staff. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah and Barak. They followed Barak, rushing into the valley, but in the tribe of Reuben there was great indecision. Why did you sit at home among the sheepfold to hear the shepherds whistle for their flock? Yes, is the tribe of Reuben. In the tribe of Reuben there was a great indecision. Imagine they are singing a song that is meant for a memorial for generations to come. They will remember how God delivered the enemies of Israel into Israel's hands and how Israel prospered thereafter. and see what they had sung about Barak and about Deborah, and hear what they're singing about the tribe of Reuben. And this is a song that will be passed down from generation to generation. Verse 17, Gilead remained east of the Jordan, and while did Dan stay home? Asher sat unmoved at the seashore, remaining in his harbors. But Zebulun risked his life, as did Naphtali, on the heights of the battlefield. The kings of Canaan came and fought at Tanakh near Megiddo springs, but they carried off no silver treasures. The stars fought from heaven. The stars in their orbits fought against Sisera. The Kishon River swept them away, that ancient torrent. The Kishon marched on with courage, my soul. Then the horses' hooves hammered the ground. The galloping of Sisera's mighty steeds. Let the people of Meroz be cursed, said the angel of the Lord. Let them be utterly cursed, because they did not come to help the Lord against the mighty warriors. Most blessed among women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. May she be blessed above all women who live in tents. Sisera asked for water, and she gave him milk in a bowl fit for nobles. She brought him yogurt. Then with her left hand she reached for a tent peg, and with her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera with the hammer, crushing his head. With a shattering blow, she pierced his temples. He sank, he fell, he lay still at her feet, and where he sank, there he died. From the window, Sisera's mother looked out. Through the window, she watched for his return, saying, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why don't we hear the sound of chariot wheels?" Her wise women answer, and she repeats these words herself. Why must be dividing why must be dividing the captured plunder with a they must be dividing rather the captured plunder, and they must be and with a woman or two for every man. They will be colorful robes for Sisera and colorful embroidered robes for me. Yes, the plunder will include colorful robes embroidered on both sides. Lord, may all your enemies die like Sisera, but may those who love you rise like the sun in all its power. Chapter 6, verse 1. Okay, before that, it says, Then there was peace in the land for 40 years. Chapter 6, verse 1. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the marauders from Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. These enemy herders, coming with their livestock and tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camels, too numerous to count, and they stayed in until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. When they cried out to the Lord because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites, saying, He said, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of slavery in Egypt. I rescued you from the Egyptians and from all who oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you now live. But you have not listened to me. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree of Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of the winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, Mighty hero, the Lord is with you. Sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you. But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family. Does that sound familiar? When God chose David, David's family was not the most recognized in his lineage. David himself was the baby of the house, the one that was supposed to be watching sheep. The Lord said to him, verse 14, the Lord said to him, I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man. Gideon replied, if you truly are going to help me, show me a sign to prove that it is really the Lord speaking to me. Don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you. Because they send me go serious matter. May it not be say I send myself, then they will not finish me. Don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you. He answered, I will stay here until you return. Gideon hurried home. He cooked a young goat, and with a basket of flour, he baked some bread without yeast. Then carrying the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the great tree. The angel of God said to him, place the meat and the unleavened bread on this rock, on this rock, and pour the broth over it. And Gideon did as he was told. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the bread with the tip of the staff in his hand, and fire flamed up from the rock and consumed all that he had brought. And the angel of the Lord disappeared when Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord. He cried out, oh, sovereign Lord, I am doomed. I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. It is all right, the Lord replied. Do not be afraid. You will not die. And Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. The altar remains in Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezer until this day. That night, the Lord said to Gideon, take the second bull from your father's herd, and the one that is 7 years old, pull down your father's altar to Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole standing beside it. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar, using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had commanded. But he did it at night because he was afraid of the other members of his father's household and the people of the town. Early the next morning, as the people of the town began to stir, someone discovered that the altar of Baal had been broken down and that the Asherah pole beside it had been built, had been broken down, and the Asherah pole beside it had been cut down. In their place, a new altar had been built, and on it were the remains of the bull that had been sacrificed. The people said to each other, who did this? And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, the son of Joash. But bring out your son, the men of the town demanded of Joash. He must die for destroying the altar of Baal and for cutting down the Asherah pole. But Joash shouted to the mob that confronted him, why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. For Baal, if Baal truly is a god, I like things like this. If Baal truly is a god, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down his altar. From then on, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, which means let Baal defend himself because he broke down Baal's altar. Soon afterward, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east formed an alliance against Israel and crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord took possession of Gideon. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezar came to him. He also sent messengers throughout Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, summoning their warriors, and all of them responded. Then Gideon said to God, if you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. I will put a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight. If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, then I will know that you are going to help me rescue Israel as you promised. And that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test. This time, let the fleece remain dry while the ground round it is wet with dew. So that night, God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. May God bless the reading of His word. That brings us to the end of our Bible reading tonight. Please do well to share in the comments your thoughts, what came to mind as we read. I find it very interesting how, you know, God told Deborah, and Deborah, said it to Barak that, see, I'm going to go with you as you requested, but God is going to not deliver this Caesarea into your hand, but into the hands of a woman. And, in my head, I'd assumed that would be Deborah, but God is interesting God has a sense of humor. How did they say it? God used a different woman entirely. And by the time we were reading chapter 6 rather, I was beginning to wonder what was happening with the men in those days. First it was Barak that was too scared to go alone and insisted that Deborah go with him. Now it is Gideon that is, asking for 2 million signs before going to where God has sent him to go. So I found that interesting. I wondered, what was prevalent at that time in terms of how sons were being raised, what was prevalent at that time. Yeah, those are the thoughts that crossed my mind as we read. Please do well to share this link with as many people as you can. Do well to ensure you are subscribed and you have the bell icon turned on. Thank you for joining me this evening. We continue reading the Bible tomorrow. Have a lovely, lovely night rest. Good night.